Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the Comstock channel. I'm Marlin Bowling with you, your host, and we appreciate you joining us here. We look forward to talking with you more as we move down the road. I want to remind you once again, feel free to like this video, and if you would, ring that bell icon below this video here so that you can get notified every time we have a new updated program here. So we appreciate that. And feel free to share this video with your friends and relatives that could maybe take advantage of the information in this report. We like to spread the good news. With me today, I have Joe Schuele, and Joe is the Vice President of Communications for the U.S. Meat Export Federation. He's based in Denver, Colorado, and he joins us today. Joe, it's always great to visit with you. You've been a busy beaver here the last few weeks. I know coming out of the holidays, there's a lot to talk about. If you would, I wanted you to touch on a recent press release that your organization put out, and it has to do with a trade mission, I believe, to Hong Kong. And I wondered what you discovered and what was revealed as a result of that meeting there.
Right. Yes, it wasn't so much a trades mission, but we're in a bit of a transition with our Hong Kong office. Joel Haggard, our longtime Asia Pacific senior VP, was based there, and he recently retired and is transitioning out. We have another gentleman there who's heading toward retirement, so we brought on a new staff person. And so our CEO, Dan Hallstrom, made a market visit to Hong Kong, wanted to check on the market conditions and get an update on the state of the market. And Hong Kong is a bit overlooked sometimes since we gained meaningful beef access to China back in 2020 through the Phase 1 agreement. Of course, our exports into China immediately ballooned to about $2 billion a year. So sometimes people overlook that Hong Kong market, but it's a big market in and of itself. When our final statistics are in for 2023, we'll do about 400 million in beef exports to Hong Kong. That makes it our seventh largest market, and very, very vibrant market through the years for the high-end food service sector as well as the retail sector, but really decimated by the COVID restrictions. Hong Kong was in lockdown for a really long time during COVID. They were rather slow to lift restrictions. And so those restrictions have been gone now for a while, but the food service sector has been a little bit slow to recover. When Dan was there, he was encouraged to see sort of a gradual recovery, some encouraging signs that market will get back to its previous state, but we've got a ways to go.
Well, of course, everybody knows that Hong Kong, it kind of lost its autonomy, right? I mean, China pretty much took it over, and there's always been this kind of an attitude in the market that, well, anything that is done trade-wise with Hong Kong, you're basically doing it with China right now. Is that true or not?
Well, we find that the businesses in Hong Kong are still definitely interested in our products. I'm not in any way downplaying the changes that have taken place in Hong Kong. There have been some very ominous developments there. But as far as doing business in Hong Kong, I don't know that we've seen a big impact from that yet. I would say that recovering from COVID is really been perhaps more of a challenge than those changes. And of course, Hong Kong for many, many years has relied so much on business travel and tourism, and that business got completely shut down during COVID. And so recovering from that remains a challenge. I think the changes in Hong Kong's governance could certainly present some additional challenges down the road. But I think coming back from COVID right now is our biggest obstacle as far as getting that market back to its previous level. But as I said, some encouraging signs lately with the food service sector picking back up, and of course the retail sector did quite well during COVID. We've still seen some good momentum there. We have some increased competition in the beef sector, with Australia's exports certainly up from previous years, but still a lot of retailers and buyers for restaurants interested in high quality U.S. beef. And we also do a fair amount of pork business. It'd probably be about a $30 million market for pork last year. And there's been some developments there on the domestic production side that could create some new opportunities.
Well, with the changes in the government structure there, has that complicated the way you operate there? Did you have to change the way that you communicate with the VIPs over there when it comes to their meat demand?
I think we've still managed to maintain our business relationships for the most part. Like I said, I don't want to downplay the changes. Could create some challenges down the road, but I think for the most part, our business relationships remain pretty well intact there.
So, talk to me, if you would, about the overall exports since, let's go back maybe a year ago and let's compare where we are now versus where we were then. When it comes to beef and pork exports, for example, China seems like they can be a big player from time to time. They bought a surprisingly large amount of beef, I thought, last year. But then at times they'll be absent there and then they'll buy a huge amount of pork and then they may step away for a month or so. So, what is up with that? People are trying to figure out what their game plan is.
Well, on the pork side, our export volumes will always depend greatly on the state of China's domestic production. China's pork industry is so massive you can barely wrap your arms around it. I mean, they produce and consume about half of the world's pork, and so when their domestic production fluctuates even a little bit, it will dramatically change their demand for imports. Of course, we saw the big surge in 2020 and 2021 when their herd was devastated by African swine fever. They've more or less recovered from that. In fact, some would say they've perhaps over recovered for a while. And so the pork supplies in China are quite abundant at this time. We've still managed to put a lot of pork variety meats into China, and China is a critical market for those items. They're still our leading market for pork variety meats, but their demand for pork muscle cuts has subsided and will probably remain that way until there's some change in their domestic production cycle. Now, on the beef side, they really don't have domestic beef production to speak of. They do produce, obviously, some dairy beef and some manufacturing beef. But for the high quality grain fed beef, we are the main supplier. We certainly compete with suppliers like Australia. We'll put some grain fed beef into China. Canada is a player in the market, but we still have an important niche there as far as high quality grain fed beef. And that business it was down from 2022. We really had off the charts demand in all of our Asian markets in 2022. And even though we took a step back in 2023, still pretty strong performance in China.
One thing I wanted to ask you about in that press release that you folks put out here in the last few days, you did talk about that ASF situation in Asia. And in some areas, it sounds like the concern is coming back again, maybe expanding a little bit. Can you maybe expand on that topic a little bit and maybe go beyond China? Where are we with ASF right now?
Well, specifically to Hong Kong, they had some isolated ASF cases beginning in 2021, but it was mainly in hogs that were being brought in from China for processing. Really didn't affect their domestic production very much. Put the industry on high alert. People don't really think of Hong Kong as a place where you would produce pork, but they do have about 40 active farms. And I didn't really see a current inventory, but as of a couple years ago, they had a hog herd of about 100,000 within the limits of Hong Kong, and so they do produce a significant amount of their own pork. Those ASF cases that were not a great concern for their industry back in 2021, but now just in the last 2.5 months, they've seen a series of outbreaks that are actually on the farm, actually in their domestic herd. And that's resulted in the culling of about 15,000 pigs. And of course, in a herd of 100,000, that's pretty significant. There can also be some residual impacts from ASF cases where producers in Hong Kong may be reluctant to expand, or they may do some selling off because they're concerned about losing their herd or losing access to their plant. And so that's a situation we're certainly watching carefully. We do think that there could be some additional opportunities, especially on the fresh pork side. We've had some exporters that have tried to gain traction in Hong Kong on the fresh pork going into the retail sector. This could possibly create some new opportunities there.
Well, that's good to hear. Well, Joe, I wish we had more time. Tell you what, I'll invite you back and we'll talk again real soon. I know you've had a chance to do some other visits around the globe, and maybe you can give us an update on some other regions as well, if that would work out okay. Is that all right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Well, we look forward to it then. All right. Thank you, Joe. Joe Schuele with the U.S. Meat Export Federation with a report on conditions in Hong Kong and China. Appreciate that report. And we will have more coming up tomorrow. I appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time right here on the Comstock channel. And be sure and hit that subscribe button, and please feel free to share this video with others. Also, make sure you take advantage of that 1-month trial for just $1. Just click on the link below.